Welcome to the latest episode of Branding the Experience, where we discuss ways where we can create environments where employees actually want to come to work and customers want to keep coming back. Hi, I'm Ken Bader, your host for Branding the Experience, also the author of the book, The Formula for Business Success Equals B plus C plus S, a discussion on brand, culture, and strategy alignment. And our subject today is how do we get business? Now, this is kind of a corollary to the podcast I did earlier this week, Cool Culture Corner, where I talked about going through consulting school. Yes, I went through an actual consulting class to help me be a consultant. 9 straight days, including Sunday. It was like a consulting boot camp. And there's a lot of great things that I learned from that. But the number one item that they really pounded in our head in a good way, all the trainers, is that there are only 3 functions of any business. Whether that's a restaurant or a credit union or an insurance company or a hair salon or a church or a brothel for that matter. And those 3 functions are sales, operations, and finance. In other words, how do we get business? How do we do business? And how do we get paid? In Cool Culture Corner, we talked about the how do we do business. Today, especially from a branding standpoint, we're going to talk about how do we get business. And one of the things that I want to really hit upon today is not so much the marketing and the social media and all that. Obviously we need to have the right marketing mix and we need to drive leads to our particular business, but more so the sales experience process on how we get business, because I've had a number of examples lately where it's been really poor and it boggles my mind, really, because we do all these things like networking and putting ourselves out there on the web, and then we get a lead and we don't have a consistent process of how do we get business, and we wind up blowing what was a pretty good lead. And I'll give you 2 examples. One, some of you know I also run the Police Officers Credit Union Association. We have a conference every year. This coming year it's going to be in San Francisco, and so I put out the conference for bid, and we're talking at least about $15,000 of revenue for a venue. We usually use restaurants, sometimes we use hotels. But that's not chump change. Maybe for a big hotel chain it is, but certainly for a restaurant it's not. And it's amazing that it took me until my 3rd or 4th restaurant in talking to them where I really got the experience that I wanted in the sales process. We're not just talking about the experience once they have the business. This is the experience in the sales process. And you would think in talking to somebody in sales and letting them know, hey, I am interested in using your restaurant, that they would be all over that in terms of follow-up, in terms of what do you need, in terms of, here's our pricing, here's what we can offer, this is why, we are the best venue for you. And I will tell you that the first 3 restaurants I went to, all small privately owned restaurants, and you would think that those would give you better service. Ridiculous in dropping the ball in terms of follow-up and answering my questions, which is really dumbfounding to me. I mean, why wouldn't you want 50 to 70 people, especially on a Monday and a Tuesday, which are historically slow days for restaurants? I will say this, that we eventually decided on McCormick and Coletto's, which is one of the restaurants in the Landry's group. And I personally, as a consumer, have always enjoyed my time at a McCormick and Schmick's or a Landry's or a Claim Jumper. They seem to have a real process down, because I talked to two different Landry's restaurants about our event, and I will tell you, they were on point with answering my questions, giving me a little bit extra, letting me know all the parameters, and even giving me, some good advice of, well, you might not want to do this, but, you should probably take a look at this menu or this particular private room. Even though it might be a little bit more money, if you want, the experience for your conference, this is something that you might want to speak of. And it's obvious that the Landry's group obviously has a process of how to get business. How do we get business? They truly went through a process with me and took the time to explain exactly how they could meet my needs. And another example I can give from just yesterday was talking to a merchant services provider about some possible business, not just from me, but from a few other contacts that I had. And I really wanted to meet with him because he had a unique brand for his merchant services program, and had a little bit of a different nuance. And literally canceled the meeting 10 minutes before we were supposed to have it. Not in the morning, not the day before, not 3 days before when I reconfirmed with him. 10 minutes before. And said, I've got this problem with a big client, I won't be able to make it. Well, we might have been a client as well, and what you just told me in your process was, even though we had a set appointment in the calendar, that your client is much more important than I am. And don't get me wrong, if you really got a problem with the client, then so be it. But it sends a bad message in that, we confirmed we had a particular time, that, you didn't know that you had an issue with the client in the morning. And if it just came up 10 minutes before our meeting, then you probably should have been in the office where we were supposed to meet. And then as I walked in, said, I've got a big client problem. Can we wrap this up in 15 minutes? And I would have completely understand. But you obviously chose that your client was more important, which is fine. But that my business, that Bader Training and Consulting's business, wasn't important enough to let me know more than 10 minutes before the meeting. So obviously, we'll be going to another provider. But that's a good example on how branding the experience, and more importantly, how we get business, having a true process, applies not only to the big conglomerates like Landry's, but also to the solopreneurs. I get that type of an experience from some of the solopreneurs out there that I meet in networking, that they cancel at the last minute, or they make me feel like our appointment may not be as important as another appointment that they have. And it just creates a brand image, a brand reflection, and a brand association that either our meeting isn't that important, which so be it, sends a message. But more importantly, if that isn't the case, basically tells me that your process really isn't a process, and you don't have a handle on your unique business as a solopreneur. So here's hoping that you're branding the experience with a process on how to get business on a consistent basis, and hoping that you're having a great branded day. Take care.